Welcome to the second lecture. Today, we're going to talk about a couple of more things out of Chapter 1, service-oriented architecture and cloud computing, two pretty big forces that are transforming the software and hardware industry. We're going to leap ahead in the book to talk about pair programming, because the plan was to give you a chance, guys, to do pair programming earlier, because the class last time thought it'd be a good idea, especially as you're learning Ruby, to do it in pairs. And then we'll give you the first two pieces of this really great language called Ruby. All right, so service-oriented architecture. So this is an idea. It's a pretty simple idea. Kind of interestingly, what happens sometimes in computer science is sometimes you express an idea and everybody kind of gets it, and they basically agree the same thing, what it means, and progress is made. There's other times you come up with an acronym and it's so inclusive that everybody means different things on it. So this term, service-oriented architecture, almost died, even though it had technical benefits, because lots of different people interpreted it different ways, and it seemed like it was just marketing things like a modular. It didn't mean anything, but it actually does mean something, and there's a fun story that's talking about it here. So service-oriented architecture means every single software component is an independent component that you could logically connect to it as if it ran on its own server. And what that means, well, if you build an app that way, it's got these individual components. It makes it really easy to reassemble the components and make a new app. And it also makes it really easy if you've built a bad architecture and you're getting feedback from your customer that it's not working the way you want. It's really easy to reconfigure and put it together. So we had to come up with a name. Software-oriented architecture what's the name for something that's not software-oriented architecture? And so we use the word software silo and have our little farm icon there to talk about it. So this idea, it's a monolithic piece of software. All the components are behind a wall. They all interact with each other. So siloed software versus service-oriented architecture. Two ideas here. So how do we explain that? Well, it turned out there was this blogger at Google who used to work at Amazon. And what this blogger did was that he would have two blogs, right? He'd have the internal blog, and often once you guys start working at a big company, oh, your company's so screwed up, it's doing all these things wrong. So you have this internal blog where you point out how mistaken the company is and what it has to do to get its act together. And he also had this blog that he'd comment about IT in general. Alas, this was this thing, but he was probably multitasking, right? He's probably looking at his phone, and then he entered his blog. Alas, his rant about why Google was screwed up, he put on the public blog, and then he probably sent one of his nicest blogs to everybody else, how nice the technology was. So Armando saw that and was pretty sure that that blog wasn't going to last very long in the public one, so we made a copy of it. But it happens to be like the best explanation of what software-oriented architecture is, and why actually, for all of Google's strengths, Amazon and Facebook really do SOA, software-oriented architecture, but they don't. Now, this person, blogger at Google who used to work at Amazon, this is, it's not really, the CEO of Amazon really wouldn't say it. You'll have to figure this out. It's Jeff Bezos wouldn't really say that. Now, Bezos is a really smart guy, right? He graduated from Princeton. He graduated with a degree in computer science from Princeton, and he went on to found Amazon. Amazon was founded in 1995, but he sent this email 7 years later about trying to get them to switch to service-oriented architecture. Okay, so this is more or less a quote, right? Edict, you come into work, you open up your email, here's email from the CEO. All teams henceforth will expose their data and functionality through service interfaces. So this not in the silo, but beyond the wall of the silo. Teams must communicate with each other. Oh, I think I can try my new gadget here. Whoops. Teams must communicate with each other. That's very valuable. Okay, must communicate with each other through these interfaces. No other form of inter-process communication, all right? You can't, no direct linking, no shared memory, no backdoors, only via service calls, only through APIs is what he's talking about. All right? Now, he doesn't care which protocol you use. He's not going to say, we're all going to use, SOC protocol or something like that. You guys figure that out. I don't care. Just use external protocols. And so when you do a service, it has to be designed from the ground up to be externalizable. That is to say, the team must plan and designing to expose these interfaces, developers outside the world, no exceptions. Okay, so, you're an engineer at Amazon, Bezos, maybe he got his computer science degree, but it's long ago. What does he know? I know better than him. This will be too slow. He'll complain about performance. I'm just going to ignore it. So how did Bezos, the CEO, fix that? Make sure you get everybody's attention. Anybody who doesn't do this will be fired. That probably got everybody's attention. And then, final thing, thank you, have a nice day. So what's the one that he didn't really write? The last thing. He wouldn't have said have a nice day. He just, the email ended, if you don't do this, you're fired, right? So that actually did get all the engineers in Amazon to throw away their software, start making externalized interface, and everything's built with SOA. Now, this Facebook was, if you guys saw the movie, Facebook wasn't started that long ago. 3 years after it was founded, they did the same thing. They went from a monolithic siloed software to this platform-oriented, service-oriented architecture. And in fact, I think it was called Google Platform is what it was, Facebook Platform. And so one day you're reading the New York Times, maybe online, and suddenly you notice you're really seeing what articles your friends are reading too. That was because they had the service-oriented architecture, and it was easy to plug lots of things into it. And the guy who was doing this rant at Google was saying, boy, Google's a great company, really great software practices, but they just don't get the service-oriented architecture. He was complaining about Google Groups as his example, because it's kind of Facebook-like, and Google Groups, they didn't have a service-oriented architecture, so there really wasn't anything you could do with that big pile of software except for follow what other people were doing. You could watch everything somebody else did, and he referred this as the stalker option. They had the stalker option, so you could stalk people on Google, which I guess wasn't his favorite app. So let's do an example that's a little bit more concrete. The idea, we're going to do a siloed version and a service-oriented architecture version of a bookstore. So in the siloed version, you have a bookstore service, and you build everything inside. And all of these things can share data and connect together. So see the reviews. The thing that's doing the reviews can access the review system, naturally enough. And the users can interact. You have to interact with users and the user profile. And all these pieces can interact together. They're well connected together. And because it's behind the wall, you can really easily do this fast. It's shared memory, so it runs really well. And the only interface to this is the single API from the user on the outside to this bookstore service. That's this wall as the API. So what would a service-oriented architecture version of this look like? Now, these services and these little boxes here are supposed to be independent servers that interact. This is all via an external API. And so you took the effort to build these three things, and then you built the same bookstore service. So what? Well, it's really easy to build other services. Suppose what you decided to do is have a favorite book service where you'd interact with your friends, and this would be, hey, there's my favorite books if you want to buy these, and then maybe before it could only handle, say, eBay or the PayPal, but you want to add credit card processing, there's another interface you could pull in. So if you pay the effort, the extra performance efforts of going through those external APIs, you can reassemble these things together. So that's an example of that. All right. So we're trying to find out which is false, which is not true. I'll read the options. The first option, service-oriented architecture does not affect performance. The siloed systems are likely completely down on a failure. Service-oriented architecture must deal with partial failures, that some components are working and some aren't. It's harder. Ideally, the whole thing fails, but if it's partially failing, it's harder. SOA improves developer productivity, primarily through reuse. And no services can name or access another service's data. It can only make requests for data through an external API. That is for SOA. So what's false there?